Well, hello everybody. Since we made it back from Far Harbor, we're here at Starlight Drive-In because I thought I'd do something a little different. While this might look like a settlement, it's not really. It's a collection of some of my favorite little build items and build philosophies that I thought I'd share with you guys today real quickly, just to give you an idea of how and why I build the way I do. Now, I play on survival, so this is geared towards survival, and you'll have to keep that in mind, and I'll explain as we go along. But starting off, let's talk about the most obvious thing. Basic layout and walls. Some people like to build walled-in communities. I hate gates. The NPCs leave them open. They don't keep the raiders out. There's no real point in them. So I don't build traditional walled communities at all. What I do is build sort of walled sections with open areas so that people can come in and out freely, with those open sections protected by guard posts. To me, I think that's much more realistic. It restricts access from bad guys, but still lets the good guys come and go easily, and it prevents the place from looking like a sealed fortress. The castle, Diamond City, places like that, those are fortresses. Settlements should be a little more open, but at the same time, I don't just plop down buildings and leave it wide open, because with raiders, animals, bugs, all of that, you would pretty much never leave everything completely open. Second, use what's in the area. We're at a parking lot. We're next to roads. That means vehicles. We're right next to some train tracks. That means rail cars. Both the train tracks and the roads carry Connex boxes. That's what they're for, to be able to put onto ships, trains, trucks, anything to carry. So if you're near any kind of transportation way, Connex boxes would be available. We're at a movie theater. Having an airplane sitting here would just look out of place. If we're not near an airport, or you're constructing a crashed plane, you could do that, but in reality, airplanes wouldn't be here, so you wouldn't have an airplane to use. But what you do have are what's already here. Wood is everywhere. You can always use that. Now, the water tower is not here. There wouldn't be a water tower in the middle of a drive-in theater, but I'll get to that later. That's just to show a building style. But when you have an area, the first thing you should always do is look at the actual ground. There's open dirt and there's grass, weeds, and bushes. When you build, keep that in mind and look at the natural pathways that exist. If you put a building where there's open ground and you're walking through the grass, obviously that grass would get trampled down. So try to place your buildings where the grass is. That way, the open areas make natural looking pathways. If you build along this philosophy, it will look like what you built was always there. Now, I did a lot of sinking things into the ground, something you should never do on a flat, smooth surface, especially something that is hard like asphalt or concrete. But this is just an area to show off the builds, and I will get to that and sort of explain that in a moment. Walls. Settlers are lazy. You can't get them to do anything. Why would they build a structure and then move over and build a wall? They would simply do a structure that also serves as a wall, and this gives you other possibilities if you use that kind of philosophy. It keeps your buildings mostly around the exterior so that your center area is open, which makes navigation a lot easier, and I think it's a bit more realistic. As you can see here, I've got a bus and a semi-trailer that I just put nose to nose. I did sink the bus in just enough to get it to sit, the entryway on the other side to sit level with the ground, but the trailer's just sitting. I did not sink it in at all. The height is almost perfect. I was able to fix that with a stair, which I'll get to in a moment, but if you put a bus in a trailer face to face, you pretty much have a wall. And it doubles as buildings for your people as well. Add in some tires, junk, whatever you happen to have that would look good and appropriate. Fill in any gaps. Helps make it look a little bit more robust. And you've got yourself some pretty solid defenses. Now, these vanilla trailers are great because you can snap floors directly to the opening. In this case, I did an entire prefab. Works great because then you can snap more roofs and you can continue to cover the entire structure if you want to. One of the reasons why you might want to cover an entire structure is survival mode. If you sleep exposed to the elements, you risk getting sick. The only way to protect from that is you have to be under some sort of protection. Some things provide protection, some things don't. Most of the vehicles and things do not provide protection. So I built a little shack onto the end of this, and inside the shack it is protected. Now this is set up more for an NPC. Maybe a railroad agent or a Minuteman person who's keeping files, tracking people, tracking things. Threw a bed in at this end, but again, this bed is not under protection. So if you were to sleep in it, you would get sick. I added an end cap with a guard post so that this end has a guard post on it. And as you notice, there's a guard post at this end. That is because I love doing this with the buses. You will find almost every settlement I have that's near a road has a bus, and every single bus is set up this exact same way. If you go to the back of the bus and use this floor section, it has to be this one. It is the standard small square that's missing the boards on one side. Turn it around and it will sink into the roof just a tiny bit and turn green right at that point. If you do that, you can set it there, snap on a set of stairs. I love using the metal ones with the railings. They work perfect. The angle is perfect to the back of the bus. And then to that, you can snap on some sort of deck or floor section. I like using the wooden foundation bit. Add a roof to keep your guards dry just for RP purposes so you don't feel guilty. A couple of posts. And you've got yourself a guard station on this end. The other benefit of doing this is when you get to the top here, you can add more floor sections if you like, or to help break it up so it doesn't look so square and perfect, I put on a little bridge section. A couple more little floor sections onto the front here. Added some decking, the simple pathway pieces to this side. Now the plywood is to cover up the fact that it does clip in a little bit into the roof of the bus and the trailer. So right in the center, there's a bit of overlap clipping in the graphics, but a little bit of plywood covers that right up. You've got a nice walkway you can then go down. Because of the difference in height, I was able to clip in a stair here. Worked perfect, and it does not show through to the inside of the trailer. Added a little sandbag here, but it gives you walls that you can run along to defend your settlement without it looking too fortress-like or prison-ish. It just fits really well into the environment, has a nice scrappy look, very functional, but it doesn't look too much like a fortress. Now, sometimes you might have bigger gaps and you might need to just wall off the back of a building, something like this. Just enough to create a wall so people have to go around, but it might not have a guard post on the end, so you can use a freestanding version, sort of like this. This is my absolute favorite freestanding guard post that I like to build, and I'll explain why. Take a truck, sink it into the ground. Rug glitch in sandbags, put a turret inside. Now, ignore my wiring here, because if you were to shoot and take out this light, it would take out the turret. You wouldn't really wire it this way. This is just to show the basic design of how it looks. Since your turret is behind the sandbags, which this only works with the laser turret, the shotgun turret, and the rocket turret. The regular turrets, the barrel's too low and it would be behind the sandbags. So that would not work and defeats the entire purpose. If you raise it up enough so that the barrel's above, the entire turret is exposed and it defeats the whole point. The point of this is, even if you use VATS, you can only target the very top of the turret. The rest of it's behind the sandbag, so there's a 0% chance of hitting. The spotlight I can target every bit of with 100% accuracy. That laser turret I can only target the very top, and then with a very significant reduction. I would only have like a 25% chance of hitting in VATS. So if your settlements get attacked and you're present so that it is functioning really instead of the dice roll when you're away, that turret has a very high survivability chance, so it will kill your enemies and your enemies will not kill that turret. Also, I like to use layered protection. If you notice, I would have a turret, a spotlight, and a guard. So you would have a triple layer of protection from this one guard post. Add the fact that the spotlight and the turret, when it loads in, would be facing the same way, so your spotlight and your laser turret would always be pointed in the same way. That's just an extra cool bonus. But when you go to glitch a guard post into this truck, there's a couple of things you need to remember. Notice the space between the hood and this deck. You have to make sure there's plenty of space. And you have to make sure the cab does not intersect with the front of the guard post. If that happens, it will completely mess up the pathing and your guards will just sit down here and jump up and down. They won't actually walk up onto it. But in this format, with everything lined up right, there's absolutely no problem. The guard can use it perfectly and easily. Again, glitch in a couple of posts and a roof so you don't have to feel guilty about your guards being out in the rain, and you've got yourself a freestanding guard post. I specifically put this here to show what I was talking about with the grass. Now, in reality, a guard walking up and down would trample this grass pretty quickly. So, place your structures to where the walkways are not in grass. It would have been better if the structure had been sitting here and the walkway were behind it. In this way, you see the path where everyone would walk is where the grass is. And now you see how that really interferes when planning a settlement. If you want a freestanding guard post that is a little bit scrappier looking, you can do similar to the other one, but the other way around. Add a simple guard post in the back of the truck, glitch your turret into the cab. Now this only works on flat level terrain. This hill is a terrible place to show this, but you get the basic idea. From the front, you can only target the top of the turret. Now in this particular layout, see the sides are open, so you would still be able to target the sides, but in such a simple layout here, the idea is they wouldn't bother trying to protect the sides as much because it's mostly to protect from straight ahead. Now this being on a hill shows a weakness of this. It cannot fire up. So if you use this method, remember, vertibirds. If you are going to be on the bad end of the brotherhood, you might not want to use this if you might have vertibirds attacking you. It works great on level ground, but from up above, yes, I've tested it. It shoots out at level ground perfectly, but it will shoot the inside of the cab, and it stops the round so that turret would not be able to shoot at me at all. So once you've got your basic idea of where your walls and structures are going to be, the first thing you're going to do is pretty much put down a place for yourself. The ultimate in survival living. Day 1. A tent with some sandbags. The ultimate in foxhole living. No other amenities, just a place to sleep. Again, in survival mode, you'll want to test. I always do a test run of games before I actually start playing, just to make sure what structures protect, what structures do not, so that I know whether or not I'm going to be sleeping in something that will make me sick. Now, what you need is a roof. Walls, on the other hand, walls can be made out of anything. And remember, use what is local. This is a parking lot. There were cars everywhere. When you build a shack, you can build a shack out of anything. Here, as you can see, tilted up a car. This is out of one of the junk wall expansion packs. Build onto it, and you've got a simple starter shack.
Can't talk now.
Put a water pump inside to protect it from getting shot. A place to sleep, some simple storage, a place to cook. And if you notice, I'm not using an actual doorway. I hate doors just like I hate gates. Everybody leaves them open, and it's just not very realistic. So I just leave a corner section here open to get in and out. Later, I would put up something like a curtain. Since, well, needless to say, this thing isn't airtight, it's very realistic as far as a simple shack goes. You can move up to something a little bit bigger if you want. Here, as you can see, out of the same junk wall pack, there's these little guard posts. Put 2 of them, glitched in underneath 2 roof sections, then glitch a wall into the back, glitch a doorway into the front. Now the walls are notoriously crooked, but glitch in some short wall sections, and you've got yourself a very ramshackled little shack. For serious gaps in the walls, a strategically placed piece of furniture will help hide it. Again, this place was surrounded by chain link fence, and in the use what's there idea, chain link fencing gives you windows and protection from bugs. Now, as you can see, it is a little short because the guard posts are a little short. So with the doorway, you wouldn't be able to get in here if you had power armor. So you might move up to something a little more substantial. Got a place to park your power armor right outside the front door. Got a little water pump over here. You just do this by placing the pod, glitching in this case, have a prefab, adding an end cap. The boards run a different way, as you can see here, so a rug hides that mostly. The end cap is overlooking a little garden, which, if you're going to have a little garden, you're going to have somebody to tend it. So got a bunk bed set up inside, 1 bed for me, 1 bed for the settler. Place to sit, place to cook. Power, compliments of a little solar station, which, yes, I notice it is facing the wrong way. Sun's over there, but you get the idea. Have an actual outhouse. This is what I tend to use the most for my player homes. The idea is these little construction pods are pretty much everywhere, especially since there's some right up at the top of the hill up there. We just brought these in, and voila, a little bit of add-on, got ourselves a reasonably comfortable home. But if you want something a little more scrappy, in the use what's available idea, cars. there's no reason you can't build your entire structure out of cars and junk. Some vanilla roof sections, just to ensure that the rain and weather are off of me so I don't get sick. In the scrappy style, glitch in some sandbags. Here we have both walls are made out of cars. Junk wall section at the end with a bed glitched in. Fire barrel with a cook station on top. Got a water pump in here. A little bit of storage. And here we've got a carrot and a potato plant that are in pots. The idea is you carry them outside for them to get their sun. Bring them in at night to keep the mole rats away. This would go excellent in a junkyard build. Really suits anything from a raider camp to the scrappiest of scrappy settlements. On that note, scrappy of scrappy settlements, the scariest, creepiest wall design I think I've ever come up with. Using the spike pole sections, glitch in a walkway at the top. And yes, you can walk freely along it. And since you're glitching these in, you can have them snake around in a very organic fashion so that you don't have to have straight lines. In the center, as you can see, I just used a bridge section, glitched in some stairs and pallets for a walkway up. You could do that at regular intervals. Add some of the straight spike poles here on the outside, and you've got a gaping maw wall. I mean, this just looks like teeth that will chew you up and spit you out. This would work great for a raider build or any place that's solid wood. I could see this up at Ten Pines Bluff, out in the swamp, any place like that. And this has a bonus, and I sort of tested it while I was working because, as usual over there under the bridge, some raiders started some trouble. My settlers I have here ran right up, pulled their weapon, and fired right over the top of this, no problem. One guy even stood here, fired a few shots, actually killed a guy who had ran up behind that tree over there before he ran out on this end and kept going. So you can shoot over this, especially if you lower it down to that height, put your platform on, your guys can shoot over this, no problem, and you can still see out very easily, but no one can get in. You can't jump onto this. So it keeps the bad guys out, but lets the good guys shoot out. It's one of my favorite creepy wall designs. I really like that. One of the other things, this is my great failed experiment. Yes, that is the telescope base. You might recognize that from Far Harbor. Glitched in a mortar. Looks great for the first few minutes. Unfortunately, every few seconds, the guy will turn the mortar a few degrees. Notice it has all these little decorative gears and knobs on it, as does the mortar. I thought it will look great, especially since it's already painted, sort of a military gray-green. But because of the animation of the fact that the guys turn the mortar every few minutes, it very quickly gets out of alignment. I wish someone would create a mod that has this mortar, but does not, repeat, does not rotate on a timer. That would be perfect. Or if they could just incorporate the two together and make it one solid unit anyway, that would work just as well, I guess. But it looks really cool when it's lined up, but in reality it just does not work. So I thought I'd show you guys that as sort of a I wish. Next, this shows off several features altogether. Number one, standard vanilla construction. Everything is 90-degree angles, perfect squares, cubes, snapping together. It's just not very realistic. People in the wasteland are not running around with carpenter's squares making sure everything is perfect. So anywhere you can put in some organic look, do it. It really helps the look of your settlement. Here I'm using part of the junk wall, and again cars, because this was a parking lot, to add an odd angle to the stairs. It really improves the look of anything you're building and gives it a much more organic feel. Second, guard post in general. Guards need a place to sleep. And so everyone does the same thing. They build a tower or guard post, and then they run over and they build a big building to house all their guards because their guards need beds. Or even worse, they put out a bunch of sleeping bags, they grab a pole, and they glitch them down into the ground, and then all of a sudden you have guards with no actual beds anywhere. Not very lore friendly and realistic. Here's a way you can do both quite easily. Whenever you build a tower, use the smaller sections of scaffolding or whatever you're building with in order to create a little half-size cubby inside. That can fit a mattress and a sleeping bag, or if you put them all in real tight, you can fit 4 sleeping bags in there. There's your guard sleeping quarters. The idea is that the guards are pretty much the low men on the totem pole in a settlement. They work pretty much just for a place to sleep and food. So this makes the most sense. Your guards, when they're on duty, they're in the tower. When they're not on duty, they're in bed. They climb into bed, they sleep, they wake up, repeat the process day after day after day. Since your guards in reality in the game don't actually go to sleep, you just have to have a bed for them. They won't ever actually climb in there. So this just looks like there's a place for them to sleep. It counts as them a place to sleep, but it's lore friendly and it's not something hidden or some massive structure. I have a decorative ladder here, which is just so that they would be able to get in, a lantern so you can see it, and this would count. If you have 1 tower for every 4 guards, you can put 4 sleeping bags in there, or if you have 1 tower for every other guard, do a mattress and a sleeping bag, which looks really good as a set, like they're just tossed in there. Then they have a place to sleep, it's lore friendly, fits well, and it's sort of realistic that your guards would sleep close to where they work. Let's look at another element of this, the reverse junk walls. One of the great things about these reverse junk walls, they look very robust and strong, but I've always disliked the fact that there's this little, well, shelf area that wasn't really a shelf. It's open, but glitch in a few pieces of wooden plank or wooden planks and the floor section, and you've got an actual shelf. Ammo boxes, barrels, crates, throw some junk on there. A couple of paint cans, whatever you want. You can turn these into actual usable shelving. Now, this particular turret is sitting on a floor section. However, if you rug glitch the turret on, you can put the turret onto a small rug, fit the small rug on there. It will actually fit all the way up against the wall without overhanging. Especially the other turrets that don't, the heavy machine gun turret, because it has a much smaller base, will fit on no problem without even having to glitch it into place. And you can have turrets on the low side while your guard and a spotlight are up high. Very realistic, very nice way to do a tower. Now, again, when dealing with structures, since these guys are lazy and they would build a structure and a wall combined, whenever you build a structure, if the outside of the structure can't be just reinforced, or if it's raised like this one, some simple wall sections along the bottom, looks like it's built in and helping to support the structure itself, and you've got yourself 2 benefits of this. because these rail cars are raised up and then it's walled in at the back, you've got usable space underneath. If you raise it up, which again, these guys are lazy, they wouldn't raise anything off the ground unless they actually had a purpose. In this case, there's shops underneath. You can put anything underneath if you raise it up enough to be able to walk through. Do not put Brahmin underneath. They will spawn on the roof. Every now and then, you'll have a person spawn on the roof. That's bad enough, but the Brahmin will almost always spawn on a roof. But anything else underneath works out really well. You can also do housing as, well, a little more individual. Let's say you wanted something a little more protective feeling. Add a personal turret to the top of an APC here, and you've got your first truly protected player home. Maybe your first bench outside. Here's an armor workbench. A little cook stove. A place for dog meat if he's your companion. A chair to sit. A couple of potatoes and some tires. And pull over an old toilet. You got yourself a poor man's outhouse. Add a couple of containers onto the side. Lantern for lighting. Glitch your bed in up high on these ledges, and you can fit a trunk underneath. Now, these APCs do not count as cover from the weather. If you go inside, you will be dry, oddly enough. It will stop the rain, but it does not count as cover to keep you from getting sick. But they are wide enough that you can glitch a roof section in above the bed, and it counts as being protected. Maybe you want something a little simpler. Eventually you're going to get to the point where you're going to go hunting for fun. Build yourself a little hunter's cabin. Got a really nice little cooking station here, compliments of the rock wall sections, a few fires, and the large cooking station. The simple cabin. These have a big hole in the roof, but again, glitch a roof section in. Keeps the weather off of you because these structures do not count as being protected from the weather. But with a roof section in, it both patches the hole and you won't get sick. Hang a shotgun over the fireplace. A fireplace that's made by rug glitching in a barrel. Pulling the rug out, and the barrel clips down into the floor. Makes a perfect little fireplace with an ember screen. Keep you from catching your place on fire. A few pieces of furniture. A couple of vegetables. Something mounted on top there. You got a perfect little hunter's cabin. Now, no, the barrel does not poke out of the back. These are very thick brick graphics. The wire frame gives plenty of space, so you can go in quite a bit. I always like to go in just enough to where the front of the barrel is inside. It looks the best, leaves enough of a gap at the top like the person could throw little chunks of wood in there. But it doesn't poke out the back at all. Really nice looking, formal hunter's cabin. Maybe you want something a little more out there. Just in case you have some more lofty goals in housing, the good old-fashioned treehouse. Now everyone that builds these do them exactly backwards. I'm going to tell you the easiest way to build a treehouse. Yes, I built the tree. That's absolutely the easiest way to do it. But here is specifically how it works. You don't build the tree and then try to build the treehouse. You build the tree, you put the tree on a rug. You find out where you want the tree house sitting. You turn the tree until you get an angle that you like. Then you grab the rug and you back the tree away. Set it on the ground at a spot that is level in height to where you're building. Then build your structure. glitch it up into place. You can eyeball against the tree to make sure you get your height and everything right. Build all your little elements based on where the limbs are, where the tree is, and what you want to do. And then once you're done and you have a structure that you like, you grab the rug, you slide it into the structure, and since you're using a rug, and you can use the pillar along with the rug, you can raise it, lower it, twist it, turn it, and get it to fit into your structure just right. If you need to adjust a portion or two, you can simply move the tree back out of the way, raise or lower sections exactly to where you want them, put the tree back, and it's good to go. Once you got your main structure into place, you can go in, add in any extra supports. This part was sticking out a lot, so I threw in a stump right next to this tree. Does not look out of place at all. I even glitched a small tree into the main tree to give a support on this side over the tree house, just to make it look a little bit more realistic. Again, in order to get that nice organic feel, I use that same wall section here in order to give an angle to the stairwell. In this case, this would be the hunter's pickup truck and his friend who came out in a car. Happened to be out hunting when the bombs fell. So their car and truck were brought in and used to help make the stairs. And it gives you this nice angled organic walkways. Since we're underneath the main house here, it's protected. Good place to put a few crates to protect your explosives and weapons. Simple chair, lunchbox, so you can sit out here, look for game. In the main house, which is very Spartan in decorations here, but the idea is this is just a hunter's cabin, only the basic necessities. Have an upper platform here, ammo can, so you can watch out for game on this side. Powered by a simple solar kit. This one I made sure is facing the correct way. And of course, while you're eating your fruit and stuff and you're spitting out pits, had some milk fruit over here that took root. Did plant a few potato plants on this side, just so that I got a little bit of extra vegetables and stuff in case I want to cook up some game while I'm here. Notice there's no outhouse. That's because it's a hunter's cabin. Just grab a newspaper, run over into the bushes. But I do have some drying racks for my leathers. Eventually, though, you're going to want someplace in town. And if you're going to build something in town, build something impressive. This is a water tower build. Now, if you're going to build with a water tower, there's a couple things you have to remember. Number one, think like the tree over there. The water tower can be rug glitched. Put it into place, figure out where you want the water tower, have it on a rug. Once you decide, get your height right for where your first floor is going to be. Then pull out the tower, set it to the side. Then build your structure. The spire is a little bit over 1 block in size. This is not perfectly lined up, I just did it to show. So all you do is when you build your structure, you make sure that that center block area is where the tower is going to be. You don't have to leave it empty like I did in this case. It just happened to work. So I didn't need to have a block in the center. But on some, like this level, as you can see, there's the whole structure here. It is just glitched into the center. Got a little bit of storage on this side. Up to the 3rd story, which this fits 4 stories quite well. As you can tell, every floor is a 1/2 overhang than the one below. This is done by when you build a floor, don't try to snap the next floor on the top. Go up, manually place one small floor section. Once you manually place that small floor section with a 1/2 overlap distance, then you can snap everything to that and you'll end up with that perfect half block overhang. And you can do that floor after floor after floor, so it gradually gets bigger and it doesn't have as much of an obvious gaping overhang that comes with a vanilla building system. This floor, as you can see, is quite substantially spaced, and it's empty because how you decorate would depend on your particular playthrough. This is just to show that you can get some sizable space out of this, and with the tower, it's definitely a solid core that is being built off of. Now the top floor here is the penthouse. Right underneath the bulb, got ourselves a very basic little kitchen, including a sink and a water line made out of conduit that is glitched into the tower for access to water. Basic cooking, countertops, and even have a corner bathroom that's behind a curtain. This is just to show that you can make a nice little living room or something up here if you want. A little bedroom. And again, curtain access to the same toilet. And this is penthouse living at its finest. Now, just like with the treehouse, once you've got it into place, you can come in, glitch in all of your individual little supports or things you might be using. I like using the post and then the little raider poles for supports. But that is penthouse living at its finest. And then if you look in the corner, like right up there, that's that wall-mounted shelf. It's like a little block that's meant to put turrets and things on. But they sink right into the floors, and if you line it up right, it helps look like supports for the floor above. Got those in several places around, just to help break it up so it doesn't look as obvious with the overhang like it's unsupported. Eventually, you're going to need housing for other people. Nothing says wasteland living like Connex Box Apartments. Once again, use what's in the area. Since we're near roads and train tracks, Connex boxes are everywhere. Now, these do not count as being undercover for survival. So if you're going to be living in them, or you're looking towards settler happiness, you're going to want a roof on them. As you can see, too wide here leaves just a bit of an overhang of the Connex boxes there, but it covers up most of the inside, so it works. But it fits 3 Connex boxes quite well. I believe if you go 5 wide, it fits 4 perfectly, or is it 4 wide fits 3 perfectly? I can't remember exactly how it works, but basically you can kind of figure it out and judge as you go. But with the roof on, they count as protected. But then the other thing is, there's no pathing inside the Connex boxes for your NPCs. But if you glitch floor sections in, like I have here, raised up just enough there, the NPCs can path no problem. Now these guys were just walking back and forth. I wish one of them would have went to bed, because then I could show that the guys can path all the way in here, no problem whatsoever. They will use the beds, they will sit in the chairs, they can do all of that, no problem. Now, as you can see here, I did sink some railing in to give a look of support to the front of this, but also to show that sinking things into the ground into a smooth surface such as this really shows up a lot. In order to prevent that look, you can hide it by just adding a few pieces of wood planking. Or my favorite thing, the rock wall, just like with the fireplace over there. This stuff is very forgiving. Oh, well, just learn to count higher. You can slide these rock walls in manually quite a bit. And rug glitching, you can pretty much pass them completely through things without them turning red. They're really good for fitting around and under structures as foundations or into smooth terrain because they are rough. They don't look as clipped in. As foundation sections, they look so much better than the standard vanilla concrete foundation. I hate those. They're too pristine, they're too straight, they're too perfect. And let's face it,
nothing but trouble.
Piling rocks is more in these guys' skill levels for construction. So this is the best thing you could do for your settlements to give that realistic look. If you don't have sandbags, the next thing they would use is just piled up rocks. In this case, you see it's an end cap sank into the ground quite a bit, and with the rocks completely covering the planks at the bottom, it gives an entirely new look to a pre-existing piece that everybody's seen a million times. Don't forget, you can put anything up against the walls to help hide that clipping look, and here I have just a planter with some corn. It fits the idea of a simple settlement, having just a little bit of planter here, and helps hide the clipping a whole lot. It is also very good for working on hillsides. If you have something that you can't sink in because it would be obvious, like this fire barrel, but you can't leave floating because it looks ridiculous, just glitch some rock underneath it. It gives the idea of just some piled up rocks, a barrel set on top, and then more rocks piled around it to help hold it into place, and it looks perfectly normal on a hillside. Now, on to some of the other things. The blocky nature of construction. If you notice, there's a bit of an overhang on this deck. Simple little differences like that help break up some of the blocky look. Now normally I would do something about the straight line along the bottom, but this is just to show how you can turn what would normally be a perfectly rectangle deck into something a little bit different. If you take something like these rail cars where the floor snaps in, but as you can see, putting two of these together means that it doesn't quite line up. Well, you can sink a floor section in, one of these narrow ones, into the middle area. There's just enough of a gap that it turns green. Cover the gap with some plywood, and since it's right in the center, you just make sure the overlap is pretty much equal. Then you can snap another rectangle section to the front of that, and voila, you've got a little bit of an overhang. Once you've got that overhang, add some railing. It creates a really nice little series of cubbies. Now because of the overlap here, you end up with two smaller ones on the outside, but perfect for fitting something like a table and two chairs or a smaller workbench, while you've got a full-size center that will hold larger items like a couple of booths. Now, about the rail cars. We're close to train tracks, so I could use rail cars. The single rail cars, kind of useful, but I like to use the double-doored ones like this, snap them together because it's a little bit longer, and one of the philosophies I like to use when building public spaces like this, where both I and NPCs will travel often, is 2 doors, 2 stairs, 2 everything. There's nothing worse than having NPCs blocking your way. But if you have 2 doorways, the chances of them blocking both are rare. If you have 2 sets of stairs, the chances of them blocking both are rare. So like she's coming up, I wouldn't even bother. I would just run over and go down this one. Always remember in public spaces, 2 ways in, 2 ways out, so that you don't get blocked. Now, rail cars themselves. Oddly enough, they count as protection from the weather, whereas many of the other things do not. Something that I don't understand, because if you go inside, you can pretty much see sky through every square inch of these things. They're rusted out and destroyed, and most importantly, When it rains, the inside of these gets soaking wet because the rain goes right through it. This is easily fixed by fixing the roof. If you do these particular rail cars, the two end to end, it perfectly fits 4 of the roof sections. If you look, it is right up against the wall on this side and right up against the wall on that side. 4 roof sections that kind of clip in. I guess the idea is they cut holes in order to brace it on the inside and on the outside, but it does not look out of place, especially as rusted out as the roof is. But most importantly, since you're using those vanilla roof sections from the expansion packs, whether it's barn or warehouse, doesn't really matter, it will be dry inside when it rains. No more soaking wet living conditions or stores and shops. Here I have a couple of end caps on the doorways in order to put a pub and a general store that are accessible from behind by private entrances. Both sides have their own little restricted area, keep out. And again, as you can see here, when I built, the idea is try to keep the grass and weeds where people are not walking. So this is pretty close, but I guess she hops up pretty often, stepping over the grass, and that's the reason why she hasn't trampled it down. But she goes in through the back, just like the bar has one on the other side. Now, anyone who's tried building with these will know ladders will not snap to end caps. Easiest thing you can do, put down a floor section that will snap to the opening, snap on a small floor section to that, remove the longer floor section, and put your end cap on. If you were to glitch this ladder right up against the end cap, the pathing for the NPCs will be all messed up. The pathing for the ladders does not mesh with the pathing on the end caps. The pathing for the ladders will only mesh with the pathing for a floor section, but the pathing for a floor section will mesh with the pathing for an end cap. So the NPCs can walk in and out, absolutely no problem, all achieved just by adding a single floor section onto the end of the end cap here. Add a little railing, and the person has a place to look over, so even during attacks, my shopkeeper and bartender can walk out to the end here and fire over the railing, no problem. For RP purposes, always put an outhouse, or 2 in this case, near to my public areas. Just sort of fits. But sometimes areas are, well, not public at all. Like this little guy. This is one of my favorite little things to build. All it is storage, just a place for some boxes and barrels. For an RP for something like this would be an actual functioning water tower. So they primarily sell fruits, vegetables, and barrels of water. You're probably wondering how I put this together. It's actually pretty easy. No, this is not a truck with tires. This is out of some of the mods that I have. It's an actual frame that sits on the ground with actual tires on it that are not flat. The truck has wheels, the actual rims, but no tires on it. So what you do is you put down the frame, you glitch in the box onto the back, and in this case I went ahead and put the doors on at that same time. Then you rug glitch the truck into place. You just have to line up the truck with the frame and the actual box well enough to look like a real delivery truck. The RP on this would be, it was a broke down delivery truck. Wheels and tires were still good, so they rolled it in here in order to use it for storage. Now, the bed of the truck does poke up. It is hidden behind the barrels and stuff. But you could still turn this into a player home because all you would have to do is glitch in some simple furnishings onto each side, like a bed and a couch, or some type of chemistry station or shelving or anything you want onto the sides to cover up the actual bed of the truck where it's poking up through the floor, and it's not very high, it's really low, but you could easily cover those and turn this into a little player home somewhere. Once again, just like with the structure over here, would work excellent in a junkyard build. And just a little note on the water tower. You probably notice there's no power lines. But I do have a street light lit up at top, and then the whole thing's lit up. That's because if you listen... Yep, that's right. I glitched a generator into the bottom. Halfway up, that generator is connected to a short power pylon that I glitched into the center of the tower in the middle. And then I glitched on the street light onto the very top. So the power actually runs vertically from the generator, while the generator sounds like an old water pump running. Really fits the RP side on this if you were to be like a water baron. And then finally on to, I guess you would say, the real last amenities that a place would have. A robot workbench. Now I hate using vault sections above ground. They just don't fit, they don't work. Unless you're sitting on a vault, how would you get these pieces here? It'd be way too much work to carry it. You would just build out of wood or what's on site. But most importantly, if you were close to a vault, wouldn't you just use the vault underground? Why would you dismantle something and move it above ground? So I hate using vault sections except for this one piece. The wide hallway, four-way connector perfectly fits the robot workbench here. As you can see, it goes right up to the top. There's just a hair sliver between the top. I've tested it using all the different robots and sat here and watched it. It does not have the arms vanish into the walls or bump or rub into anything. It fits perfect. It's a very robust structure, albeit very clean. I guess the idea is if you have a robot builder on site, he would have lots of robots. So those robots would keep the place clean. So that's probably about the best thing you could do to justify having such a clean structure. It just works so well, though. Add a few, machines and things around. You can decorate it how you want. It really fits too much to ignore. The only reason why I have that big honking generator on top is to show that with such a robust structure, it looks like it can support a lot. So build a shack or something on top. Throw a generator up there. Windmill. Anything you want. It looks like it can support it. Well, is it the first thing you build? Is it the last thing you build? Everyone has to have a radio recruitment beacon. But they slap the thing down, they hook a wire to it, and they walk away. Yes, it's got a power switch. Yes, it's got a dish, but where's the actual signal coming from? You could build it next to a building, you could put down a desk, you can set a radio. But why not have a little fun with it? This is the only good thing I've ever found with these little pod vehicles. Glitch in a small little table there, add a radio on top, and you've got yourself a radio operator's comfortable seating, protected from the weather, and a really fun little design that explains where your message is coming from and how it all works. Finally, once again, in the use what you have, not what shouldn't be there, this place was surrounded by chain link fencing. Just like in Sanctuary with the white picket fencing, use what's there. Chain link fencing to hold in the Brahmin is much more realistic for this location than the idea of them going through all the work of bringing in this wire fencing. With all the chain link fencing around, they would simply relocate it to wherever it's needed, just like it's used in construction. Use what's in the area already, and it will look like it fits. And that's it. A basic look at the philosophies and styles that I use in building my settlements. I hope you all enjoyed it. Starting back next episode, we're going to get back into the Commonwealth. We've got a lot to get done, and eventually we're going to have to make our way out to Nuka World.